I got my girlfriend pregnant when we were teens. 16 years later, she's still my wife. I'm now 33 and my wife is 31. While having beaten incredible odds, we've done our fair share of messing up. This will be mostly about myself, but having been with my wife for over 16 years now, my marriage and my family take up a significant portion of this story. So here it goes. I was born in San Diego, California, and even as a small child, I knew I was lucky to be growing up in paradise. I visited my grandparents in Arizona one summer and asked why people didn't go to the beach since it was so hot all the time. I felt sympathy when I was told there was no ocean there. I loved San Diego. This is important. I had a pretty normal elementary school situation. Not popular, not unpopular. I was smart. Things went well, but not exceptional. I did, however, make the notable decision at the age of 12 to skip going to my middle school and instead get on a bus at 6:30 a.m. to get sent off across town to a much better school in a terrible neighborhood with a computers program. This is also important. At any rate, when I was 15, during the summer between 9th and 10th grade, I was informed that my family and I would be moving to Colorado not long after the upcoming Christmas. This was not news that I welcomed. I'd had a few girlfriends by this point, 5 during my freshman year alone, so I had an active social life, and was enjoying playing in my awful garage band. Because I was young and 6 months was a long time, I generally just played this up to my advantage to get free stuff from my male friends and attention from my female friends. That is, until the week after Thanksgiving in 1994 when my parents flew to Colorado to look for a house and I stayed over with a friend and rode the bus with him to school. I'd chosen to attend faraway high school as well. Then, my life changed forever. My friend introduced me to a girl, let's call her Claire, that week, who would eventually impact my life in some big ways. I won't give a ton of story for this part though, because it's not super relevant except we started dating with exactly 30 days before I had to move away, which at 15, and at the height of one's pretension, seems very cinematic and tragic. It really put things in the lens of a faded / Romeo and Juliet kind of thing, which wasn't the kind of thing I could emotionally handle at that moment in time. Claire was also my first intimate partner, which at that young of age makes things even heavier. She broke up with me the day after Valentine's Day after I'd moved because she'd already kissed some other boy. We'd of course written awful poetry to each other, spoken about marriage, decided we were soulmates, had plans for children, what our jobs would be, where we'd live, etc. By this point, and that's how our relationship ended. That time. We remained in this unhealthy, non-friends, non-enemies, non-dating, but on and off friends with benefits cycle for a couple years, even while we both were involved with other people. This is also important. My move to Colorado was tough, but ultimately I found many new friends, a new band, a new circle of people I still talk with to this day, and many girls, including Jennifer, the one who'd become my wife. She was a friend of the girl I was dating at the time. Let's call her Amy. She said something to someone about Amy having a wrench on me, and that she'd vowed to have me by the end of the year. She had me within 2 weeks. You see, ever since I was very little, girls were an obsession for me. I never had that girls are gross stage. I pretty much always wanted to be around them and more as I got older. While Amy, the girl Jennifer stole me from, and I fought constantly and had real issues with jealousy and clinginess, mostly on my part, I found that Jennifer and I didn't fight at all. We just didn't, and still don't really. We'd discuss any issues that came up and talk them through. Everything was great. We got along really, really well. Too well, in fact. Her mom had a hard time dealing with her divorce and was essentially depressed and did nothing but work at her job and watch TV. She wasn't the most attentive woman around, which for a 17-year boy and his girlfriend was golden. And being dumb, reckless teenagers, of course we got her pregnant. As you can imagine, finding out was no picnic. We were looking for a place to eat on the day of our 1-year anniversary, and at dinner, she kept running to the bathroom to throw up. This turned out to be a clear sign that my wife was pregnant ever since. By this point, and despite the uphill battle we had explaining this to our parents and them fighting us, we decided to have the baby. I also started art school around this time. I went to school and worked a combined 15 hours a day some days. She worked at Target, and we lived together at her mother's house for about a year and a half. I eventually got a good job in my field that paid me a salary. We moved into our own apartment and got married about 18 months after our son was born. We waited to get married, which I thought was a smart decision. We didn't want to rush into a marriage and eventually feel obligated to each other in more ways than our son if a relationship between us didn't work out. It was a good move, I think, even if it did confuse my son when he was old enough to do the math between our number of years married and his age. We had a young growing family, financial ups and downs. I lost jobs and insurance, the economy tanked, I supported us on freelance and unemployment. While I worked for one particular crappy company, we had our second child when our oldest was 3 despite the fact that my employer never paid my insurance premiums, unbeknownst to us, so our baby's delivery and my wife's prenatal care were not covered. This led to terrible debt issues, which led to us paying rent late regularly. We needed co-signers for car loans, we had our phones shut off routinely, and through it all, we loved each other. We supported each other and in general, made a happy life out of a hard one by loving each other and our children. When our son was diagnosed with diabetes at age 5, incurring a life-altering set of instructions for how to care for him, we didn't have health insurance for his hospitalization and incurred a $30,000 hospital bill, and despite it all, we rolled with those punches. Having received her GED, Jennifer attended nursing aid school and went to work overnight at a hospital. Let me preface that I'm not blaming her being gone at night for what I'm going to tell you I did next, but it explains how I had the time and what kind of environment I was in. You see, our marriage had devolved a bit, as the above paragraph might lead you to expect. Since we had been together since we were essentially children and hadn't had much time to mature independently, we were emotionally enmeshed and incredibly codependent, as our therapist would later point out. We just always had to deal with a lot of money problems, which kept getting worse when my son went to the hospital. We developed trust issues. I was snooping through her email, she was snooping through mine, and at this time I became inappropriately close friends with my ex-girlfriend, Claire, the one I had unhealthy and boneheaded obsessions with for years and years. That one. We had 2 children under 5, who were incredibly spirited and did not particularly get along. We dealt with sleep deprivation, mood swings, depression, anxiety, passive aggressiveness, codependency. On top of all of this, we spent 5 nights a week apart. We still got intimate quite frequently, but it wasn't fulfilling anymore. So at this point, it's pretty clear that I did something super messed up. Something that surprisingly saved our marriage. I entered into an emotional affair with Claire, despite all of my friends hating her, despite my wife insisting this woman still had a thing for me, the woman I'd been convinced at one point I was going to marry had I not been trapped by my wife and kids into this life. Claire was getting married soon, and had her doubts about that. We discussed our relationships in intimate detail, which led to the inevitable. We could treat each other so much better than our spouses are. We didn't care what our spouses would have thought about it. We were only in it for ourselves and had tons of ways to justify what we were doing. We started sending insane amounts of text messages. We made secret email accounts, all day texting while we were at work, all night phone calls while my wife was at work. It was bad. The only way I can describe living with myself while behaving this way is compartmentalization. I could alternatively turn on and off the version of me devoted to my wife and family and the version of me devoted to my affair. I could post all day about this, and I bet it's where most of my questions come from. Some previous points from above that played into my behavior, besides a complete lack of love for myself, respect for my wife, and mental clarity. I had a soft spot in my heart for my hometown, and still do, and Claire was a connection back to the life I had before it fell apart, before I moved away, before I knocked someone up, before I needed to scrape snow off my car in the morning. The affair took place exactly 10 years after our initial whirlwind Christmas time fling in high school, and somehow that made it seem just as poetic, or justified, or meant to be, or something equally self-serving and disgusting. It was easy to slip back into that ill-fated star-crossed lovers outside of everyday life. I spent a lot of time missing that 16-year-old girl I fell in love with and started a family with, while simultaneously resenting the 23-year-old stressed-out wife and mother she'd become. At my hands, admittedly. But that wasn't important to me at the time. I was not capable of communicating my needs to Jennifer because I didn't feel she was capable of hearing them. So I told Claire instead, and she'd tell me about her unmet needs, and we decided to be each other's fun secret. When some issue got heated between us, she wanted to get presents for my kids, and I wouldn't let her, for instance. We'd cool it off by reminding ourselves that we were the fun ones. The sequence of events for Christmas 2004 was early Christmas morning. My wife leaves town to visit her sister on a pre-planned trip Christmas evening. I take my kids to Denny's for dinner and get incredibly depressed and thoughtful about what I was about to do, and what would happen to my life because of it. Day after Christmas, I take my kids to my parents' house, then drive directly to the airport, where I pick up Claire. The next 24 hours, I proceed to take this emotional affair into the physical realm, send my mistress home New Year's Eve, then pick up my wife from her trip. What you need to understand is, Jennifer is truly amazing. It's at this point in the story where I really truly realized just how amazing she was. When she found out that the Christmas trip I'd sent her on to see her sister included my ex-girlfriend coming to town and spending 24 hours with me at a downtown hotel, she didn't throw me out. She was beyond angry, to be sure, but she didn't throw me out. She said she wasn't done with me yet. She came close to being done with me many times, but she never did. This can be attributed to about 12 million things, but mostly, I had to look in the mirror. I had to dig deep down into myself and my mental health, which took a crap ton of therapy for myself and couples therapy as well. I worked my ass off to prove to her just how re-devoted I was to us. I was terrible at first, but I got the hang of it. We worked on ourselves aggressively over the next few years, and even separated once for a total of 24 hours. She demanded I quit smoking to prove I had future plans with her and my children. I did it. Her mother moved in and helped manage the household, while our marriage swept back and forth between stability and chaos. We cried a lot. We yelled a lot. We got intimate a lot. Once, when things were back on a good track, I mentioned once how much I regretted doing what I'd done. My wife said, "I don't. If you hadn't had that affair, we wouldn't have been forced to look at ourselves and fix things. Your affair saved our marriage." And while I agree, I certainly can't say it's the best way to go about things. And here we are. Our son is 14 and in high school himself. Our daughter is 11 and in middle school. We have a 4-year-old who is incredible. My mother-in-law has moved out. I am finally at the very top of my career and field. My wife is a full-fledged nurse, one of the best at her work. She still works 5 nights a week, but that isn't a problem in the slightest because of how we treat each other the rest of the time. We make well into the 6 figures and can provide things for our children and ourselves we never even dreamed of. I started traveling and seeing the world for work, and travel has always been something I love. And without Jennifer's support and love, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish half of what I have. I had to realize it's because of my family, that my life is great, not in spite of them. I'm not perfect, but I'm working on being the best dad I can be and the best husband I can be, and things are working out pretty well. To anyone who sees a bit of themselves in the chaos above, I'm proof that things can work out even when you mess up.